All right, welcome everyone. If you're planning a career in aviation, and I'm talking to all you future managers and cabin crew out there, you need to know this stuff. We're not talking about some optional extra credit topic. This is the bedrock of the entire industry. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on something called a quality management system, or QMS. We'll see how it goes from just a piece of paper in an office to something real and active on the tarmac.
I mean, think about it. What really keeps things safe and running smoothly when you're cruising at 40,000 feet? We all just trust that it works, right? But it's not magic, and it's definitely not luck. It's a system, a really deliberate, highly documented, and constantly audited system. It's the secret sauce that manages all the mind-boggling complexity and makes air travel the safest way to get around. So what is a QMS, really? Well, you can think of it as the operational DNA of an airline. It's this hidden framework, this whole set of rules and procedures that dictates, well, everything, from how a plane is built and maintained to how the flight operates, right down to passenger services. And the one single goal of all of this? Total, unwavering safety and quality.
Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to cover 4 key stages. First, how it all starts at the top. Then, how you build the actual framework. After that, we'll look at getting the system up and running and certified. And finally, we'll talk about why this is a never-ending process. Ready? Let's dive in.
All right, Section 1. Quality starts at the top. This is the leadership mandate. And I can't stress this enough. A QMS doesn't bubble up from the bottom. Nope, it's a top-down directive. For all of you future managers, listen up, because this is critical. A successful QMS starts with one thing: absolute, rock-solid commitment from the very top.
And when I say commitment, I'm not talking about a nice speech or a memo. We're talking about real, tangible action. Leadership has to actually write the quality policy. That's the company's promise to everyone. They have to set clear goals you can actually measure, like, say, reduce tarmac delays by 10%. They have to pick a dedicated quality manager and give them real power. And they have to put their money where their mouth is, funding things like ISO training for everybody, so the whole team, from mechanics to cabin crew, is on the same page.
And this isn't some fluffy mission statement that just hangs on a wall. It's a formal, public declaration. Just look at this one from the FAA's Aviation Safety Branch. It's short, it's to the point, and it's a promise. Committed to continuously improving the world's safest aerospace system. That one sentence guides every single decision they make. That's top-down commitment in action. And let's be super clear here. This is not optional. You can't just opt out. The big regulatory bodies, the FAA here in the States or EASA over in Europe, they're the ones who give airlines permission to fly. And they don't just suggest having a QMS. They require it. It's non-negotiable. No QMS, no flying. It's that simple. Okay, so leadership is on board. They've given the green light. Now what? How do you actually build this thing? That brings us to our second section, building the QMS framework. And I want you to think of it like building a house. You don't just show up with a pile of bricks and start stacking, right? No way. You need a detailed blueprint. So this whole construction process really breaks down into 2 big steps at the start. First up, you have planning. That's literally creating the blueprint. And then you have design. That's like the detailed engineering work, where you map out the schematics for every single part of the system. So in phase 1, planning, the very first thing you do is something called a gap analysis. Sounds fancy, but the idea is simple. You take a really hard look at how you do things right now, and you compare it line by line against the gold standard, which is usually ISO 9001. You're just asking, okay, what do we do versus what should we be doing according to the standard? And that difference, well, that's your gap. And trust me, this is not just a paper-pushing exercise. The results are huge. Just look at this. Companies that do a really good gap analysis have an 85% chance of passing their certification audit on the first try. An 85%. Plus, they see a 30% drop in errors and a 25% boost in efficiency. It just proves that planning ahead pays off big time.
So, once your gap analysis tells you where all the holes are, you move into phase 2, design. This is where you roll up your sleeves and get to work. You're actually writing the documents and procedures to fill in those gaps you found. So if the analysis showed you don't have a formal way to track engine maintenance, well, now's the time to write that procedure down, test it out, and make it official.
And this process creates some key documents that are absolutely mandatory. Your quality manual, that's like the constitution for your whole system. And then you have these other procedures that act like the laws. For example, control of documents is a big one. It makes sure a mechanic is always using the latest version of a repair manual, not some old, outdated one. Control of nonconformity spells out exactly what to do if a bad part is found.
At the end of the day, all this paperwork is the proof. It's the evidence an auditor can check to see your system is real.
All right, the blueprint is done, the engineering is finished. Now it's time for the actual construction and the final inspection. This is the exciting part, where all those plans on paper become a real, living, breathing part of how the company works every single day.
And this happens in the last two major phases. Step 3 is deployment and testing. This is when the system goes live and gets put through its paces in the real world. And that leads to Step 4, certification. That's the official thumbs up from an outside party saying, yep, this thing works just like you said it would.
So, deployment. This is basically go live. You flip the switch. All those new procedures, they're now the official way of doing things. The staff gets all the formal training they need, and this is where a really important concept kicks in, the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, or PDCA. This is what turns the QMS from a boring rulebook into a powerful engine for getting better all the time.
Let's make this real. Here's how PDCA works in an airline. First, you plan. You decide to create a new, smarter pre-flight checklist to reduce errors. Then you do it. Pilots actually start using the new checklist. Next, you check. You analyze the data. Did it work? Did errors go down? And finally, you act. If the data says yes, you make that new checklist the official standard for everyone. Update the manuals, and then the cycle starts all over again, looking for the next thing to improve. See? It's a constant loop.
And that brings us to the final hurdle, certification. First, the airline applies to an official certification body. They'll do a pre-assessment, basically checking your homework, making sure all your documents are in order. Then comes the main event, the certification audit. This is where independent auditors come on site and watch everything to make sure you're actually doing what your manuals say you do. If you pass, you get certified. But it's not one and done. They come back for regular surveillance audits to make sure you're still on track, because quality never takes a day off.
Okay, Section 4. You might be thinking, wow, that's a lot of policies and procedures. And you're right, but why does it matter so much? Because a QMS isn't just some project you finish and hang on the wall. It's the engine of improvement. It's the living, breathing heart of any great aviation organization. And understanding it is going to be huge for your career.
And the fuel for that engine? It's that PDCA cycle we just talked about. Plan, Do, Check, Act. I want you to remember that because it's more than just a 4-step process. It's a mindset. It's about building a culture where everyone is always asking, how can we do this better? How can we be safer? How can we be more efficient?
So, let's bring it all home. What does this actually mean for you? Well, if you go into management, the QMS is going to be your best friend. It's your framework for managing risk and proving to regulators that you're doing things right. If you're going to be cabin crew, the QMS is the reason you can have total confidence in your emergency procedures. You know, they've been designed, tested, and standardized for maximum safety. Really, for everyone, it creates this culture of quality and accountability that makes passengers feel safe and builds trust.
So I want to leave you with this one final thought. This whole framework, it's not just for giant multi-billion-dollar airlines. It's a powerful way of thinking you can apply to anything. So I'll ask you, think about your own life, your own studies. What's one thing you do, maybe even just how you prepare for a big exam, that you could make better using that simple 4-step cycle? Plan, Do, Check, and Act.